Order. This is the June meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach Board of Adjustment and Appeals. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call when you're ready.
Member Lawson?
Here.
Member Chase?
Here.
Chair Skipper?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the city clerk is now going to administer an oath to anybody that would like to speak today. If you plan on speaking, you'll need to stand up. She'll instruct you how to do this.
Okay, anyone who will be speaking to the board or making a presentation needs to be sworn in. Please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you are about to give or present to the board is truthful? Okay. Our first item is the approval of the agenda. Is there any other changes or anything to the agenda?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Chair Skipper, if we could just make an announcement that due to the fact that we only have 3 members here, just
Yes.
giving applicants the ability, because if any of them wanted to continue, it would be appropriate prior to approving the agenda.
All right. Today, there's normally 5 members. There's 2 absent today, so there's only 3 here. So for your case to pass today, it takes all 3 people here to vote in favor of it. If it's 2 to 1, your motion will fail. So if you'd like to continue, you have the ability to continue this on to another date when the other people would be here. If not, you certainly can go on with the 3, but it takes all 3 votes to get your case approved. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Okay.
If not, we'll go ahead.
So with that said, there are no changes to the agenda.
Right. Okay, and, at this point, audience comments. If you're planning on speaking today on your case, it's fine. If you're here for something else, this is the appropriate time to come forward and you can speak for 3 minutes on anything else you'd like to speak. So anyone else here that would like to make any comments?
Chair Skipper, if we could just get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And then,
All in favor?
Aye.
okay, thank you.
In the audience comments, hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. If everybody's had a chance to look at them from the previous meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes from May 31st.
Second.
Discussion, not roll call.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Member Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to our action items. And the first case today is 23018, 2007 Pacific Way.
So Charles is not here. I don't think so. Anybody else to do the presentation? Let's be out.
Okay.
And then we need you.
Okay.
All right, so first up today, we have variance case number 23018. The applicant is Charles Collum, owner of Collum Properties LLC, located at 2007 Pacific Way. The applicant requests an unnecessary and undue hardship variance to install an 8-foot high fencing that exceeds maximum permitted height of 4 feet within a waterfront yard. Listing of exhibits. Here is an aerial of the aerial of the property. The site is highlighted in green. It is a restaurant use of red, white, and booze. It is a corner lot located on the Paso Grill Channel. It has a single-family residence to the north and east, another commercial to the east, south to another commercial restaurant, the Wharf, and a commercial uses to the west. The property is located within the CG1 commercial district and also CG on the future land use map. Here is a current survey of the property. And this is just an enlarged portion of the survey showing the proposed fence and location. As you will note, it is on the south side of the property. There is a section of the 25-foot long fence of 8 feet where only 4 feet is permitted. So you'll see that in the orange box. Just a detail on the request. Going on now to the site, noticing was completed as required. Again, it is a corner parcel, so 2 signs are posted, and they were posted on June 20th. Here is a picture of the front of the building. This would be the parcel to the south, which is also the Wharf Restaurant. Looking north across 21st Avenue is a single-family residence. Just panning a little bit, also looking north at the intersection. And this is looking Paso Grove Way to the west, which is the commercial development. Now going on to the property, you'll see at the bottom there is the survey, again just showing the portion of the fencing that they're looking to replace or to install. They are not removing any of this existing fencing, they're looking to install new. And this is looking at the parking lot. And on the bottom corner, you'll see, starting on the east side at the seawall, that little marker in the bottom middle of the picture, that's the property line, the property marker. All right, the following slides will show conditions of the existing fencing. Just also gonna look for some testimony from the applicant if, like, for example, these existing pilings are to be removed, any other debris that is within the existing parking lot, should that be removed. Another example of items located within the parking lot, and the applicant has also indicated on the survey that we saw prior that they're going to install the new fencing approximately 6 inches in on the property. And just moving west, additional conditions of the property. Okay, so here we are at the front property line along Paso Grove Way. The red circle does show the property marker. The applicant wishes also to construct a 4-foot high fence in this area, which does meet the requirements of the Land Development Code. And here's just an overall view to kind of give you an idea. The red line shows the area where the max height of 4 feet is permitted, where the 8 feet is requested. The red and yellow combined is approximately 91 feet of 8-foot fencing, and the green just represents 25 feet of the 4-foot high fencing. So overall, they'll have approximately 117 feet of fencing. And 92.54 of that feet will meet the height requirement. For the hardship variance, here are the variance conditions. The criteria and comments that were also located within the staff findings report. There was a technical review committee held on March 15th of 2023 on the TRC agenda, which was prior to the amended application and plan submittal. So we did have this application on a few months ago. Since then, the applicant did come in and amend his application, but everything was treated as if it was new. Noticing was posted. It was just amended by the applicant.
If I may, just to bring some clarity for the record, the reason it was amended is because there was a question about the ownership of the property in which the fence was located on. So as a precaution, we went back to the drawing board, and now we've confirmed that the fence that he's asking for a variance on is in fact on his property.
You confirmed that by survey, probably.
Correct.
And also in the indication that it wasn't a removal or replacement. He's installing a new approximately 6 inches. But again, the applicant can provide some testimony on that as
Okay.
well. Okay, there were staff comments that we would like the applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony on. And due to the proposed 6-inch inset of the fence on the property and the width of the shadow box fencing, the applicant should discuss if the car stops are to remain and if the parking spaces will still meet the minimum depth requirements of 20 feet and the drive aisle width of 24 feet as per the Land Development Code. The applicant's estimate that they provided as part of the amended application package described a wooden shadow box panel. The applicant should discuss if there's any changes to the proposed fencing in terms of style, color, or any other changes. Testimony should also be provided detailing the installation of the fencing and if it's intended to be placed on top of the existing seawall and if any gates are proposed. The application and site plan submitted also shows construction of a 4-foot-high fence from the front property line, 25 feet to the east, then beginning an 8-foot-high fence as per shown on the plan. And while this portion of the 4-foot-high fence will meet code compliance requirements, the applicant should just describe this information presented to the board and provide an overview of all of the proposed improvements. Staff does find the request reasonable, and the installation of fencing with the additional height within the waterfront yard will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood and improve the appearance of the property. And staff does recommend approval of variance case 23013 as proposed. We did not receive any letters with regards to this amended application.
Okay. Okay, good. Is the applicant here or the representative?
Yes.
You could come forward if you. We need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Byron Bates, 6036 107th Avenue North, Pinellas Park, 33782.
Okay?
Chair Skipper, if I may, what is your association? Because,
So I was about to ask that. but
well, because the application is only Charles Collum, and there's no authority for any agent to
he's a
speak on
fence
behalf of
company.
him.
I am the general manager of the restaurant on that
Okay.
property.
Do you have a power of attorney or something to be here?
I do not. I was asked to come here to represent Mr. Collum.
So, unfortunately, there's going to be no comment from the applicant. He can speak as the public would with 3 minutes, but there's no authority for anyone to speak on behalf of Charles Collum based on the application. And I looked up the LLC, and he's the only managing member, so there's no one else associated with the company.
Okay, could they have they could have the option of continuing this, or what?
They could. I mean, he can still give layperson testimony, but he can't really address, as the applicant,
The conditions?
the conditions or the questions, nor does he have authority to agree or disagree to them legally.
I think he'd probably be ahead to continue it.
Okay. I will share that with Mr. Collum.
I mean, there is a separate document in the application where you can authorize an agent, and it's just not here, and you have no power of attorney. So,
Understood.
unfortunately, legally, because there may be some back and forth here on conditions that you can't really bind the company on.
Correct.
Would
Okay.
there be the option to hear it at the end of the hearing for today, or?
Yeah, if we can take it out of order if you want to get the applicant to show up here,
Okay.
as opposed to continuing. So at the end, if he's not showed up, that we can continue it. But if you want to give him a call, and we'll just move on to 4B, if the board is willing to do that.
You think you can get him here?
I'll do my best. I'll reach out to him immediately.
If you can't, you just go on to the next time.
Okay.
All right, so
I appreciate your time.
we're going to move you back to the end of the agenda.
Okay.
So it's an additional 3 applications, so we'll have that opportunity.
All right. Thank you.
Okay?
Okay. We don't need any action to move him back to on the agenda or not?
No,
Okay.
I think it's pretty clear what we're doing. So we're just going to move on to 4B.
All right, we'll move on to case 23026, 131st 72nd Avenue.
Okay. Variance case number 23012. Applicant owner is Jay Guzman. He's located at 131 72nd Avenue. The applicant also requests an unnecessary and undue hardship variance to retain the existing detached 18-foot by 15-foot covered patio structure that does not meet the required 5-foot side yard setback with 3 feet provided. Also, I just wanted to mention, this was continued from our May meeting as he elected as the applicant due to the 3 members present to carry it to this date. Listing of exhibits. Aerial of the property, the site is highlighted in green. Zoning map, the property is located in the RLM2 zoning district and RLM on the future land use map. The survey of the property, again, this is an existing covered patio structure that he's looking to retain. And this was due to a code enforcement issue. It was constructed without a permit. The applicant is looking to retain it. It should be noted that the non-conforming structure currently exists on the property, and the applicant submitted a variance application in connection with the code enforcement case. This case did appear or be created of November of last year, of 2022. Okay. Going on to the site, noticing was completed as required. The application again was continued at the May 31st hearing to today at the applicant's request. The front of the duplex that was constructed in 1949 according to the Pinellas County property appraiser. There are multifamily apartments to the west, and the other adjacent neighbor to the east are 2 single-family residences. Okay. Going into the rear of the property, along the side property line, along the eastern side yard, you'll see the covered patio structure that currently exists. And here are just some other views of the existing patio structure. And you'll note that there is some seating along with a granite-topped bar area. Okay. On the upper left-hand side is just a view from the western side, and the right is of the eastern corner of the property. Just additional views. And this, the picture on the left is just a picture taken from the edge of the driveway looking to the rear of the property at the existing structure. And then the right side is showing the 3-foot side yard setback where 5 feet is required. Variance conditions for the unnecessary and undue hardship variance. The criterion comments that were addressed in the staff findings report. Staff comments. Applicant feels that the applicant should provide testimony and respond to staff comments. If the board does not grant the variance, the applicant should provide testimony of how the structure would be brought into conformance or if intended to be demolished. The applicant should discuss if a contractor had been contacted to assess the construction and if it was built to code. The applicant should also provide testimony if adequate landscaping exists that screens the structure from the street and if any additional landscaping is planned to be installed in the side yard where the structure is located. Staff does find the request is reasonable and will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood, but staff does recommend approval of variance case number 23026 with one condition, that the applicant to obtain the building permits for the structure to ensure it was properly constructed. And should the structure need to be altered or reconfigured based on the building department review, the applicant may be required to return to the board if determined by staff. And there was no letters received for or against.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant here today?
Yes, he is.
Can I get your name and address for the record?
Josias Guzman. My address is 131 72nd Ave, St. Pete 33706.
Okay. You want to explain what you've done, or?
Well, basically, I purchased the structure. When I purchased it, the gazebo was there. I did a couple things to it, improved it, invested on granite and, you know, just sitting areas and other stuff that removing it right now would basically I'll basically have to tear everything down, or because granite won't be able to be moved. And once I move the structure and the granite just the offset, it's basically double investment that I
Could you
don't
get a little
have.
closer to the mic? We're having a little
I'm sorry.
problem here.
What I was trying to avoid was trying to remove it due to the fact that it will cost me a double investment. I won't be able to redo it again.
Okay, and it was there when you bought it?
The gazebo was. I put a lot of money around it to make it better, but I didn't know that it was built illegal.
Okay. And the staff had some questions about, you know, you'd have to, if it's we approve it, or you'd have to get a building permit.
Okay, that's not a problem. I'm more than okay
I
with
don't
it.
know that it's built to code, but you know, you'll have to figure that out. But if not, I'm sure you can make it to code.
Okay.
And if it wasn't approved, you're gonna have to come up with some sort of plan, possibly removing it.
Okay.
But okay, let's take a look. We might call you back up. You got anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's
No?
all. Thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate it.
Anyone else here would like to speak on behalf of this applicant? Do we have anybody that's in opposition to this case? Okay, hearing none, we'll open it up for board discussion.
I mean, after the fact, approvals are always tricky, but particularly when the owner wasn't privy to the fact that he was purchasing
Right.
something that was out of code. And so I think the staff's recommendation to have the additional permit review makes a lot of sense.
Yep, I agree. I think it looks great. I think you've done a good job improving it, and subject to your willingness to get it permitted, make sure that it's safe to deal with the hurricanes and winds we get. You know, I'd be in favor of a motion to approve the variance with the conditions specified by staff.
You know, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be brought to the building department, maybe some modification to it or strapping or something, but I think it's okay to be there.
Particularly given there's no adverse.
There's no
From the
effect on
neighbors.
anyone, I don't think, so. All right, do we have a motion for approval or whatever?
Yeah, Chair, if I could just ask if there's any ex parte communications you guys would like to disclose specific to this property?
None.
None.
Thank you.
None.
So yes, I'd move to approve the variance with the staff's recommendation of the applicant seeking the appropriate building permit and inspection.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Member Lawson?
Yes?
Member Chase?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, you just need to get with the building department. Next case, I think, is going to be Brandon, case 23032, 601 71st Avenue.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Brandon, if we could just do it out of order. Any ex parte communications you guys like to disclose
None?
on this one?
None.
Thank you.
All right, so this is variance case number 23032. Applicant and owner is Dave Wansick of St. Pete Beach Investments, LLC. The property address is 601 71st Avenue. It's a three-part unnecessary undue hardship variance request. The first is to install 12 elevated mini-split HVAC systems that do not meet the required side and rear yard setbacks. 7 of those HVAC systems are going to be in the side yard where a 10-foot setback is required and 2 feet 9-inch setback is proposed. The remaining 5 HVAC units are in the rear northern setback where a 20-foot setback is required and 3 feet 3-inch setback is proposed. The second request is for a staircase that encroaches into the required 7-foot front yard setback with 6 foot 6 inches proposed. And the third is to provide 3 additional lodging units of the property without providing additional required on-premise parking. These are variances to Land Development Code Section 36.8 for the setback variances and Section 23.5 for the parking variance. This case has been advertised in accordance with the local ordinance, and we have received 5 letters of opposition to the parking variance specifically. None of them addressed either of the other 2 variances. Here's a listing of exhibits. An aerial of the property. It is located at the northwest corner of 71st Avenue and Coquina Way. The property has a zoning of UBV. That is the same for its land use. The UBV district is a single to multifamily zoning district. It does also allow for existing temporary lodging facilities like the subject property to persist and be renovated, and in some cases have additional units added on, which I'll discuss in a moment. Here's a boundary survey of the property. Here is the request. The property is currently undergoing significant renovations. No additional footprint is being added to the building. However, the upstairs of the building is being finished, and there are significant renovations taking place both in the courtyard where the pool is located, as well as in the existing downstairs units. I'll show some detail on those in a moment. This shows 2 of the 3 requests. The first is for the elevated HVAC units located on the west and northern side of the structure, showing that encroachment into the side and rear yard respectively. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see the proposed staircase that's encroaching into the front yard along 71st Avenue. This is again reiterated the request detail. I'll go into detail on each of the 3 requests in just a moment. Here's some photographs of the site. This is a double frontage property at a corner, so we did notice along both frontages. This is a a photograph of the property recently prior to any renovation work being done. Here is the structure as it was photographed about a week ago, showing the renovations taking place. Another looking from the corner toward the structure. This is looking to the east from the west side of the structure, looking toward the back where the side yard is located and where 7 of the 12 HVAC units will be installed. So again, talking about the HVAC unit encroachments, the side yard setback on the west side is required to be 10 feet. 7 of the 12 units are proposed at 2 feet 9 inches from the side property line. On the northern side, that is the rear setback. Required setback is currently 20 feet. The proposed is 3 feet 3 inches for the remaining 5 HVAC units. This is showing the north side of the structure where the remaining 5 units would be installed. And this is the side where the other 7 would be installed. The staircase encroachment, the minimum is 7 feet. The front setback of the property is 10 feet, but open stairs are allowed a 3-foot encroachment. The existing setback of the building is 10 foot 2 inches. The applicant's proposing 6 feet 6 inches for the stairs. This is showing the side of the building where that's located. You can see it's fairly heavily vegetated where the staircase would be installed. And this is looking from the other side of the fence toward the structure. And another looking toward the west. Here is an overall view of the parking. Like many properties in the Upland Beach Village District, this property does not contain any on-premise parking. All of its parking used is public parking in the right-of-way. There are currently 10 spaces located to the eastern side of the structure, and the applicant is proposing to install 3 spaces entirely within the right-of-way to the southern side of the structure. Those will be parallel spaces. In the past, I believe they were used as perpendicular parking spaces, but the fence line was moved out, limiting the size of those spaces. The applicant has proposed to orient them so that 3 additional spaces can be installed in the right-of-way. There is 0 on-site parking. However, there are the 10 spaces on the east side of the property. There would be 3 additional on the south side of the property. And just to give some context to what's being done, there is currently renovation work taking place at the property. The applicant is finishing the upstairs. The building is currently an 8-unit temporary lodging structure. They are effectively creating suites at the ground level, so there will be 4 suites at the ground level, 4 additional units at the upper level. So the unit count for the property is not increasing. However, 3 of the suites at the lower level, units 101, 102, and 103, will have 2 access to the courtyard. The applicant's requesting to be able to put up a door in between those units, and in doing so, that triggers the additional 3 parking spaces through the code. It would not actually increase the size of the building any more than the renovation permit already is increasing the size of the building, but it would allow for what the code defines as lockout units, where each of those double units could be rented as single units with a lockout door in between them. This request before you today is only for the parking variance. This density pool request for the additional 3 units is under a different cover. If the parking variance is approved, it would move on to the City Commission as a request, so that this isn't the last stop for this request. Again, the 8 conditions that are necessary to issue an undue and unnecessary hardship variance. Just to quickly summarize staff findings. Staff finds the request for the parking variance does pose a hardship variance to the applicant due to the existing layout of both the lot and the historic Upland Beach Village District generally. The structure was constructed in 1956. It was not subject to zoning at the time, and to staff's findings, the building has not been dramatically altered in that time. Many existing structures in this district lack any parking whatsoever on their property, with the parking spaces that are partially or fully in the right-of-way used for guests or residents. The request is minimal given the scope of the request. the fact that the applicant is willing to provide for 3 additional parking spaces, as well as green space improvements in the right-of-way in front of their property, and because the renovation scale will make use of existing interior spaces rather than add to the building. Regarding the HVAC variance, the applicant has demonstrated through the renovation plans that the request could be supported without a variance by placing the units on an elevated platform above the roof line. They did make application for and were approved for the renovation plans. It did show the HVAC units in the setback. However, the engineer did certify through the plans that if this request were denied, they could place the units on platforms above the roof line. So that would be the requirement if they were denied this request. Staff do find that the variance meets the items in the code, given that the neighboring structure also utilizes the space between buildings for ancillary equipment, and as an aesthetic preservation is considerate in the property zoning district. We do recommend approval for the HVAC variances. For the third variance, the staircase variance, the request is only 6 inches. However, the request does not pose a hardship for the applicant, as they have demonstrated that the stairs can be placed within the courtyard. Again, as with the HVAC variance, the engineer certified that they could be placed in the courtyard if this variance were not approved, and they would be able to still move forward with their building permit. That would meet the setbacks as well as fire and building codes. We have spoken with the fire marshal and building official about this. There is a significant amount of mature vegetation on the southern side of the structure, as was shown in photos. The staircase would encroach into that, and it appears a substantial amount of that vegetation would need to be removed. This case did go forward for the May 17th Technical Review Committee. There were no comments from any other committee members regarding the variance request. The staff requested the applicant provide their own testimony and respond to staff comments. We asked that they respond to the staff's request for denial of the staircase variance if they find it would deny them rights available to other property owners or would present a hardship to their project. The applicant should discuss alternative shared parking arrangements if any have been made available to them, should they not receive the variance request that's being requested for the parking. The applicant should acknowledge that the issuance of the parking variance will not entitle the creation of the 3 additional lockout units unless the corresponding request, case number 23040, is approved by the City Commission at a forthcoming meeting. And provided that the existing dumpster enclosure is to be removed, how does the applicant intend to address waste materials and facilitate pickup? Staff recommends approval of the variance for the HVAC and parking request, finding them to be in general alignment with the Land Development Code, providing for mitigation of potential hardship, and resulting from special conditions of the subject site. We recommend approval with 4 conditions: that the variance of the waiver of the 3 required on-premise parking spaces shall expire should the complementary temporary lodging unit density pool case be denied by the City Commission, or should the case not be heard within 1 year of the date of the development order for this request, whichever occurs first. The second is that the variance for the parking spaces shall apply to the building in its current configuration only, except that doors may be installed internally to create 11 lockout units should the request be approved by the City Commission. Future expansion of the building beyond the existing renovation scope, whether or not rooms are configured to maintain the 11 lockout units, shall require the applicant to reobtain the variance, meet on-site parking requirements, or pursue an alternative arrangement, such as a shared parking agreement. We have been in discussion with the applicant about possibly acquisition of adjacent property and inclusion into this project. If it were to result in an expansion of the building, we would expect for this variance to expire and an additional arrangement to be made. Our third condition is that all existing mature and healthy landscaping at the southern side of the building shall be retained. It appears that some of that landscaping has been removed. We would be looking at the existing condition as of today. And 4, that the applicant shall not install any signage that implies the right-of-way public parking spaces to the south or east of the parcel are private spaces for their guests, including but not limited to tow-away signs, numbered parking signs, and so on. Staff recommends denial of the request for the staircase encroachment, finding it to not be in general alignment with the Land Development Code on the basis that the engineer for the corresponding renovation permit has demonstrated that the stairs could be accommodated in the courtyard without significant hardship. By accommodating them in the courtyard, no variance would be needed for the staircase, and it would also not affect, as far as we could tell, that landscaping on the southern side of the building. That is all we have. I believe the applicant is present to speak.
All right, very good, thank you. Could the applicant come forward, please?
Good afternoon. David Wanzik with St. Pete Beach Investment LLC.
Okay, you'd like the staff's pointed out a number of things and we have some questions on. You'd like to explain to us?
I guess first of all, I just kind of want to let you know what's going on with the HVA mini splits is what they are back there. If you look at the pictures, and I went out and measured it, I'm taking out the wall units that are currently there right now, and there's also existing water heaters that are in the encroached area right now, and those stick out up to 36 inches from the building right now. What I'm proposing is actually going to be closer to the building than what's currently there right now.
I thought so.
Yeah, so the mini split is going to be on a rack right on the wall, and the rack, it's in the paperwork, doesn't extend out more than 24 inches from the exterior of the building. So it'll actually bring the equipment closer to the building than the existing equipment is right now. As far as the parking spots, there are currently, prior to my ownership, and there's 8 spots that were being used on that side of the street. So I'm actually reducing the parking spots from 8 to 3 because I'm going parallel now next to the fence and the pool. So I understand that they're in the right of way, but those spots have been used since, probably the beginning of the building, and every person that owns property on that street appears to be in the same situation using those right-of-way parking spots. So I'm actually reducing the spots from 8 to 3, and I'm putting in a landscaping area to make it a much nicer area there than currently exists right now. In regards to the staircase, it is true, we could move it, and I know they recommended denial, so obviously whichever way we need to go, it looks aesthetically much nicer to have it there at the front. It's not going to be blocking the pool. Just the whole view and the look and the whole development, it would look much better, and it's 6 inches. We tried to make it, we went through many different design phases to try to get it as close to the wall and as, the smallest area of setback we could, and 6 inches was the absolute maximum we could do. It is true through the engineer that we were able to move it and put it by the stairs, and if the staff finds that, I can't do it there, then that's where we'll end up doing.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add? I think I understand it.
I don't think so, unless you have some questions for me.
We might have. I don't know, anybody have any questions at this point?
And just to start, there was a question about the trash pickup and where the dumpster would be relocated?
No, there must be some mistake. There's small blue cans there right now, and so that really wouldn't change over in that back corner.
Gotcha.
One of the concerns with the staircase was in regards to the landscaping and vegetation. Can you talk a little bit about what would need to be removed from your perspective and other landscaping that could be added?
There's a couple small shrubs that were removed just to kind of get to have it accessible right now through the construction process. And I haven't done anything. I'm waiting for what happens here today. You saw the pictures were very recent. So I've sort of stopped the balcony and the staircase, and I'm waiting for whatever the board decides today to kind of go in either direction.
Could we get the picture of the mature landscaping up on the monitor?
Sure. So this is looking from at the front of the property.
Yeah, if you look right there, you can see the corner, and going out to the left, that's where the stairs are going to go. They're either going to go coming down in front of those 2 windows right there, or they're going to go out in the front of the building, and you can see I've stopped, I didn't work any further than where I'm at right now, just till I hear back on what we're able to do.
So do you think you could, it looks like at least you'd have to remove that fan palm there on the corner. I'm wondering about the taller.
The taller tree would be
sable
fine.
one. Yep,
Yeah, it would be fine.
they'd be fine.
Yeah, we've already got where we mapped out and ready to go right there. And we did have to remove a couple small little trees, shrubs right in that area. Certainly would be more than glad to put them back, and once we finish construction, it's just kind of a tight spot right now.
Sure. Yeah, and obviously this is just a construction dumpster. This isn't your trash pickup.
That's exactly. That's
Question on the mini splits, what, on the ground floor, how high above the ground are they going to be?
I'm going to put them about 3 to 4 feet, just so I don't have any flooding issues or anything like that.
Put them higher, was anybody walking through there so they wouldn't run into them?
there's really nobody, if you want to go to the pictures, nobody would be walking, there's no access back there through for hotel guests or people like that. So I'd have to put them quite a bit higher, but I was planning on putting them probably, I mean, up a ways, I'm not going to have them down where, they'd be on the,
Here shows it's about the height of the windows.
pardon me?
The wall unit that's existing shows it's now at about the height of the window.
Yeah, I would put them probably right around that area, maybe a little bit lower, to be honest with you. I want to make them so they're accessible to work on, and I'm a short guy, so you never know who's coming out there, that they could get to it easily and work on it easily.
Okay.
And can you explain a little bit more about reducing the number of parking spaces in the right-of-way from 8 to 3? How did that come about?
Well, there's spaces right now that have been in use since, you can tell, since, I'm born and raised on St. Pete Beach, and that place has always been the same every time I've went by it. And people were parking there right now. They were just diagonal spaces being used. So I'm taking those 8 spaces out and reducing them to 3 spaces now. I'm tearing out asphalt. I'm putting in landscaping at the front and also landscaping against my neighbor as well, too.
And I think that it seems like from the letters that we're looking at, that's the root of the neighbor's concern, is that parking is an issue for everybody in the area. So they're extremely concerned about the reduction in parking and the addition of possible more units and more people.
Well, if you see the first aerial photo, those are all parking spaces right there. So, I mean, that were being used as parking. So I'm reducing the number of parking spaces, if that's what their objection is.
I think the objection is that there are not enough parking spaces for the number of people, and everyone's having trouble finding parking.
Even without these spaces, there's enough space within the code for what's there right now.
Right.
So actually more than enough space. There's going to be no on-site office or no on-site staff or anything like that. So it's really, the biggest benefit is honestly the handicap spot, and then there's 2 other spots. So it'll be, more apt to do that is what I'm looking to do. Plus, it's going to be obviously aesthetically much nicer because the 2 corners are coming out, and I'm putting, landscaping in there and trees and everything else.
So the diagonal parking that was removed, that was there previously, that parking was on your property or was on in the right of way?
Well, it's all been on the right of way. It's, the prior owner and owners has always used those spaces for parking.
The 8 spaces.
Correct.
The diagonals. So I guess I'm just
Yeah.
curious,
So,
how did a private landowner go from taking 8 spaces down to 3 on a public right of way? How did that happen?
I'm just as curious, but just to clarify the number of spaces. So if you look off of Coquina Way,
Yep.
there are 10 spaces there.
Gotcha.
Right. So I just want to clarify. There's
I'm looking
18
at
there.
First, I'm looking at the 3 parallels, and then
Yeah,
figuring
no,
if
I
those have been
understand.
Converted from 8.
Well, because he's saying I'm changing 8 to 3, but essentially he's changing from 18 to 13.
Correct.
Right.
Right. I just wanted to clarify that
Yeah.
because
And
3
if you-
parking spaces for your entire.
Right.
Would
Yeah, and I
be-
see that.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm only talking about the area that,
I understand.
and if you look, just to further look at it a little closer, if you look to the left, you'll see my neighbor, all those parking spots are in the right of way.
Right. No, and
And the next neighbor, and the next neighbor.
I understand that. I think the concern is that we've got a stack of letters here from people unanimously objecting that there's not enough parking. There are too many people for the parking we have available. And now we're hearing that the total spaces adjacent to this property are going from 18 to 13. And I'm just like, how'd that happen?
And I guess the other follow-up question would be, like, what's the reason for having to reduce the parking spaces versus,
To limit it down to 3,
yeah, like, why reduce parking?
because zoning. They wanted me to reduce the number of space. That's what they approved.
Wow.
The city wanted you to reduce the spaces?
That's correct. Am I speaking incorrectly? I mean,
Right, I'll speak after you.
okay, yeah. I mean, they asked me to make the spaces that way, so that I agreed to do that.
Because I'm not sure how you could remove city parking, reconfigure them without some kind of city approval to do that.
There would clearly be some kind of right-of-way. I mean, it happens a lot in our city where off-street parking is right-of-way parking. I mean, even if you go like right down here off the end of Corey, you have some of these. I mean, parking's deficient.
It's
period. So it's a pretty common, and that's why the code distinguishes on-site and off-site, right? So that you can still meet your parking requirements by actually using right-of-way spaces from the city.
Right.
I don't want to be deprived the right to use that like every other landowner in that area. Like literally, the motel next to me is using the city right away, and they're allowed a lot more spaces than I am.
Yeah, and I'm really curious why we went from 18 to 13 when everyone's saying we don't have enough parking. And people are arguing against your getting the parking variance to be able to install the lockout doors based on the lack of parking, yet here we apparently have told you to reduce the number of parking spaces.
My initial site plan had more parking there, but they, in order to get it approved, they asked me to reduce it and to put in the landscape packages, which I agreed to do.
All right,
Maybe we can hear from Brandon again to get a little bit more clarity on.
Brandon, could you give us some clarity on that, please?
So while this was going through permitting, this was brought up to the city's transportation department, and there are indeed what used to be 8 spaces there that are perpendicular, but they don't even come close to meeting the code requirements for depth. I believe they're about 12 to 14 feet in depth. So what would happen is we get a larger car. The current code standard is 20 feet in depth. You would have a car sticking out into the right of way. There is city work that's proposed in that area in the future moving forward.
Okay.
So in terms of just retaining this as a long-term solution, we spoke with the applicant about making them into parallel spaces. Again, these, as they're right-of-way spaces, they're not recognized as dedicated for this use, but just given that it was determined to be a safer arrangement.
So in order for them to conform, the parking spaces to conform with code, it was required to reduce it to 3?
Correct. Those are 24-foot long spaces, which are code compliant for parallel spaces. So
Now we're looking at, they're 12 feet.
correct. They have enough depth to both serve as an ADA
We're
space.
hanging out into the street.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
And there's no provision for like compact parking spaces or things like that.
There is for, and again, it's city right of way, so there are provisions for that. It's not subject to the typical zoning code, but given the use itself, it's not eligible for those compact spaces in this area. So, but that was worked through with transportation. That was their recommendation for this.
Okay, thank you, Brandon.
Cool.
You have another question? No. Okay, is anyone else here that'd like to speak on behalf of this applicant? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Jerry Nemeth. I live at 671st Avenue, which is directly across the street from this project. We've been living there for 4 years now, and we consistently have parking problems. Now, we do have double spaces in our parking lot, which are assigned to each unit. With that said, every holiday weekend, every busy weekend, we have people trying to park in our spaces. Now, by limiting the parking across the street, it's going to only aggravate the situation. Furthermore, by adding units to this project and taking away parking spaces, the fact remains that people come in with more than one car. So if you have 11 units, and let's say you have 15 cars, where are they going to go? They're going to park in my parking spot, and you can't get them out. This is a real issue.
Okay, I'd ask if anybody was in favor of this. I take it you're not in favor.
Absolutely not.
Spoke at the, okay. All right, so
Chair-
noted.
Chair Skipper, may I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Sir, could you come back to the
If you
podium?
don't mind. So 671st, because that seems all of these letters came from, is it an apartment complex or a condo?
It's a condo.
And I'm assuming, is it right-of-way that you're parking on, or is it
No,
private property?
these are assigned spots that we have as part of our condo property.
And how do you normally, I mean, do you trespass people when they park there inappropriately?
Well, actually, this is an ongoing...
Or not trespass, sorry, tow.
Yeah, this is an ongoing conversation with our property manager and our board.
Okay.
They don't wish to trespass people because then the property manager would have to be at the property to sign off on the tow, which means you have to spend every weekend there, which he's not going to do.
So, and I'm not giving you legal advice, but it's as simple as putting up a sign, a towing sign, on your property, and
Which we have.
so Yeah, I mean, I'm just mentioning
I
that.
think
we
you could,
have.
if there's a towing sign, I think the towing company can tow.
Correct. Well, that's why I was
If
kind
they
of
can
just
identify.
confirming that it was private property, because you guys have other legal ways to
Right, but
address.
the issue, as I understand it, is if we put a towing sign up and we have a agreement where the towing company just views the property and they feel that somebody's parked illegally, they tow him and he's not, then we have a big issue.
Yeah, understood.
So it's either somebody's there to sign off on a tow or not. But like I said, we have issues with people staying in the condo, parking in multiple spots.
Okay.
People come in with 2 and 3 and 4 cars on a weekend, and I can only envision what's going to happen when they build in these extra units across the street and take away 5 spots.
I appreciate that. Thank
All
you
right.
for
Thank you.
answering my questions.
Anyone else here would like to speak on behalf of the applicant? Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to this application? We've heard one already. We'll count that. Anyone else? If you want to speak, you need to come back. Well, you can come back.
Yeah, you're allowed to rebut.
Just like to address the parking issue. I've owned other hotels and motels on St. Pete Beach, and I would say on average about 50% of my guests come by vehicle. Typically, a lot of days, especially more and more now with the Sunrunner and everything else. So if I've got a full house, you're going to see about half my spots full. And first of all, we're not talking about the increase in the density at this meeting. We're talking about this parking spot. That's not up for the board discussion today. Thirdly, there's actually 13, if approved, 13 spots. And even if we did do the lockout doors, that would still be more than 1 spot per customer. And like I said earlier, I'm born and raised on St. Pete Beach. If you've got somebody parking in your spot, it's not from my guests. It's from weekenders coming over, exactly like he said, coming from Tampa or people who live in the area or whatever. So it doesn't matter if I have 10 spots or 50 spots there. They're going to park wherever they can and park illegally. So I just want to point that out. That's the absolute truth of it. So
Okay, well, you can't really control those spots on public property because they can park on them. Anybody can park on them.
Right, yeah. So it's not going to be just an issue for his place, my place, anybody. On holiday weekends, people just come out and they park wherever they can. I mean, that's the reality of it.
All right.
And so would you discuss the presence of the lockout doors? The reason we're here talking about the parking variance is because of the desire to install the lockout doors, correct?
Correct.
And how many additional units would that give you the potential to rent?
It would be, if all units were used and locked and opened up, or locked out, I apologize, that most of it would be 11.
And without the lockout doors, it would be a maximum of
8. Correct. Yeah, that would be the maximum. And so I've already got, even without these 3 spots, I've got 10 spots, because there was 9 spots on the other side that I created into 10 spots. Just because of the size of them. So there was actually a spot added on the other side of the road. It's not up there anymore. And then we reduced the other side. So I'm not denying there could be parking spots, but it's got nothing to do with my guests. It's going to be from people coming to the beach that weekend and not extra guests at my resort.
How do you advise your guests, because you do not have private parking on site, how do you communicate with them about the difficulty of parking because they don't have any more claim on those spots than a weekender does?
Well, there's enough spots that I don't even need those 3 spots. So the guests that come will get a parking pass for the 10 spots that are available.
Are you legally allowed to provide parking passes for those spaces that aren't those also in the right of way?
Well, I don't know. Is that an issue to allow them to do that on the other side?
I don't think you can give passes for the.
Okay, then I won't do that. But that was going to be my plan, is for those 10 spots, at least to give passes out for
Good
them.
idea, but I don't think you can.
Yeah. I don't need to do that. I mean, I'm going to just tell them, just like anybody else, there's 13 available spots, and it's first come, first served basis.
And it's not 13 available spots for your guests, to be clear. It's 13 available spots that anybody can use.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Driving over for the day.
I don't mean to misrepresent it. We have 13 right-of-way spots in the area, but we don't guarantee there's a spot there. I'll just say that, yeah, obviously in the marketing that there are spots available, but there's no reserve parking there.
Yeah.
I think is a better way to put it.
Take an Uber or a Lyft.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating, obviously I want to get it passed, but I'm telling you the reality is, if you go by, half the people don't drive anymore. Rental cars are extremely expensive, And there's just no reason to do it. Half the people just Uber, they take the Sunrunner, and they don't bring a car.
You understand if we were to approve this, you still have to go to the city commission to have those lockout units.
Yes.
Those 3 additional units. So if they would deny that, this is a moot point.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why I know the other gentleman was bringing that up, and it has nothing to do with this here, and that's my understanding right now. We're only talking about what I'm doing in the parking lot. That's a different day.
All right, thank you, that's it.
Okay.
We might have another question.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to comment? If not, we'll open it up for board discussion. We'll close public debate.
So technical question, Paul, are we looking at 3 separate motions? One
I believe so. I was going to ask the city attorney that.
Yeah, I
We have
believe
3 separate.
It's one variance application, 3 separate variances, all require their own motion.
Each variance.
Correct. So you treat each, I mean, for consistency, right, the same applicant, we provided to you together,
I
but
think we'd start off with the air conditioning one.
Indeed. Move to approve the air conditioning.
We have a second.
Second.
Is that a second?
Second.
Second. We have a motion, a second, discussion? Not roll call?
Member Chase?
Yes.
Member Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
okay.
Then on the staircase, I'm not convinced it's aesthetically going to be that different between the side versus the courtyard. And I am concerned about, the vegetation. It did seem like some of those larger trees could stay. But I'd be inclined to say that variance really isn't required and have them build them where the engineers already
Do you
said
want
they
to
would
put
be
that in the
sound.
form of a motion?
I like I thought the fan palm would have to go.
She's in the midst of a motion. We can discuss it after we get a second.
Motion to deny the variance request as suggested by staff for the staircase setback encroachment.
Okay, do we have a second to that?
Or discussion.
I'll second it and
Okay.
open it for discussion.
I can see leaving the view unobstructed to the pool being nice, and I think what they'd give up would be the fan palm, and given that he cares about the property, I think the mature vegetation that is really what you see would be, if we could ask him to preserve that, I think that would be nicer to keep the pool unobstructed. So I could be convinced otherwise, but I think
We could have a condition that the existing palms remain.
Is that possible that could stay?
You can add
We
whatever.
can add waiver condition.
You can absolutely add conditions. If you're going to, then I would have Member Chase withdraw her motion so that it can be amended.
Would you like to
Sure.
stay with your motion or withdraw it? And
I'll withdraw my motion and provide an alternate, a motion to,
I'll withdraw the second.
okay. A motion to approve the variance request for the stair setback encroachment with the condition that the current palms remain intact.
You have a second to that?
and if we could pull up the picture real quick, because this,
I'll second the motion so we can have discussion.
Okay. I guess my only question is that feasible?
This is the current status as far as last week when the signs were posted.
is it,
And that's,
That's absolutely feasible. Nothing could be touched at that point. Absolutely.
That's what my understanding was, that they'd already removed everything that they would need to in order
Yeah.
for the stairs to be
Okay.
built. So once I heard that, that does make a difference.
Okay?
I just want to point out, and so many people tell you, I'm more than willing
We can't talk anymore at this point.
Okay, I apologize.
yeah.
Thank you.
So with that being said, is the condition
We have a motion and we have a second.
We have a second.
With a condition.
with the condition?
Any further discussion? Not roll call?
Quick question. You said what remains intact?
The current palms
Current
and
palms.
landscaping,
Okay, thank you. Member Lawson?
yes.
Member Chase?
yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
That moves us on to the parking.
It does.
So complicated.
So complicated.
I
feel
mean, I
like
think
you're taking-
the applicant's in a tough spot because he wants as much parking as possible too, but he's been told by permitting and zoning that this is what is required in order to to move the current parking into zone, which it currently isn't compliant.
I don't think they can do the variance.
Yeah, and it's in the variance.
They can,
I understand.
as a condition of CUP. Go ahead, sorry.
All right, the variance that we're discussing is existing because there is no on-premise parking, correct?
Right,
Just
they're
because of the age
adding
of
the
structure.
additional units without having any on-site parking.
Yeah.
But there's
Where
not,
none exists current.
yeah, and that's not possible, so they're,
Are they required to provide on-site parking for the additional units? Can they, or can they utilize the street parking?
They're allowed to use a small percentage of the street parking, it's not a one-for-one though. Under the 11 units, they would need 10 spaces and they would only be eligible for a small portion. It wouldn't be enough to cover the increase.
So the 11 would cover it.
The 13 spaces, if they were to be dedicated to this use, which they're not, none of them are, that would be sufficient under the land development code, but it would not, the existing conditions, they're not reserved for this use.
And if the parking isn't approved, they have 8 units and they have adequate parking to meet the code as is.
Correct. They are renovating, they're rearranging some of the units in the building with the finishing of the upstairs, but they could continue to use the structure as they go through the renovations. It can open without any issue.
Okay.
May I ask one question, Chair Skipper? So if the parking variance gets denied, the CUP does not happen?
Correct. They would not move up. Well, if they could come up with a shared parking agreement or some other kind of arrangement where they provide 3 on-premise parking spaces, they could move forward.
Because the only thing I'm thinking, if the board's up to it, and I'm going to confirm with Brandon, the moment you deny a variance, they have to wait 6 months to come forward. So is there a situation in which they defer this variance request to travel along with the CUP to the commission and make the commission the body, which they can, to decide on both?
This would be a standalone resolution. I know with conditional use permits, you can have a variance accompany it, and if this were that situation, it would carry, but this is just it's just a resolution. There's no conditional use permit required. So if...
Okay. I was just...
So that doesn't work then. I'd love to pass it on to them.
No. Well, because, I mean, they're kind of contingent on both, so I just thought it made
Right.
sense to have one body decide. Because if you don't get the units, then you don't get the parking spaces and vice versa.
Right.
So at a minimum, if you approve this, I think Brandon has done a good job crafting the condition that if the CUP were denied, then then the variance would also be denied.
yeah.
Right. Okay, we'll open it up for more discussion.
I mean, I'm supportive of the renovation and, you know, the beautification of the property. And it seems like that if we're just talking about the parking and this is what would need to be done in order for the renovation to occur, I would be in support of that, knowing that we're not ultimately deciding whether he can expand his hotel. And so if that...
Just move on to the
Yeah,
commission.
it would enable the commission to make that decision versus if we deny the parking, then that shuts the whole thing.
Then it doesn't go to the commission.
Yeah.
And I-
Unless he comes up with a different shared parking
He
arrangement.
can come up with a shared parking agreement to provide the spaces.
But I mean, that whole area is pretty much right-of-way parking.
That's out of our,
Correct. Sorry to cut you off, Member Lawson.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking out loud that I absolutely feel the resident frustration of the weekenders, but I do think it is the weekenders. And I also see the applicant's perspective that, you know, his guests are not the ones, you know, we're talking about 600 to 900 rooms, not 8 to 11 rooms
Yeah.
causing our issues. And obviously we have a ton of people and a ton of traffic. It's a little frustrating that we've got 5 spaces disappearing because they're short, but you know, I can understand the safety implications there too. So we're taking a tough problem and making it worse. I am not inclined to penalize the applicant based upon what otherwise seems like a reasonable use of his property and you know, making a nice investment in the community. So I'd be inclined to offer a motion to support the parking variance.
I also really feel that the struggle for the neighbors and the parking in general. I think it's great that you guys have the dedicated spots and that it is private parking, and hopefully you can work with your homeowners association to help kind of police that a little bit better.
Okay, was that a motion that you made?
Yeah, I'm moving to approve the parking variance.
Would we have a second to that?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call?
And that, just to clarify, that motion includes the recommended conditions on page 77, correct?
That it expires if the CUP is
Correct.
denied or not addressed within a year.
And then there's a few other related to the parking spaces. Thank you.
This expires should it not move forward with the city commission.
Correct. Yeah, I move to approve the parking variance with the conditions recommended by staff.
Okay, does the second
Second.
agree with that?
Yes.
All right, nothing further. Roll call?
Member Lawson?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And this will move on to the city commission now.
Correct.
Okay. Next case is 23-039-6502 Gulf Winds.
All right. Variance case number 23039.
Before we get started, any ex parte communications?
No.
None.
Thank
No.
you.
Give me just enough time. So the applicant owner is Kelly Strom for KAJE Properties LLC, located at 6502 Gulf Winds Drive. The applicant requests an unnecessary and undue hardship variance to install a paver driveway 20 feet in width at property line where a maximum of 20 feet is permitted. Okay. The site is located on Gulf Winds Drive. It is highlighted in green. The property contains a triplex constructed in 1947, according to the Pinellas County property appraiser. There are multifamily apartments and a single-family dwelling to the north, a duplex to the south, a triplex to the east, and commercial office buildings to the west. So we got a lot of different uses surrounding. The property is located in the CC2 zoning district, also CC2 on the future land use map. Here is a copy of the survey of the property. Again, the triplex, there are 2 units in the front. One kind of scoots back to the rear. I did do, just for a better clarification, I just went over with marker the proposed locations of the improvements of the pavers. There are some additional patios and walkways that are proposed, but not part of the necessary variance, but just so you could see to what they're actually constructing. Makes it a little clearer. Again, just a little bit more information on the request detail. This is a current code enforcement case that is currently open on the property due to construction without a permit. And upon the applicant's submittal for zoning review, it was denied due to the proposed width requiring variance approval. Going on to the property, the sign was posted on June 20th and all notice was completed as required. This is a picture of the triplex from the front. This is the adjacent property to the south, which is a duplex. And looking to the north, it's multifamily apartments and a single-family dwelling. Just again, this is part of a code enforcement case. Here are the color of the pavers that they're looking to put on the property that have been located within the right-of-way for quite some time.
I was wondering what was going on with these.
Same.
Yeah. This is, excuse me, from the southern property line. I'm just going to take you from south to north on this. And this is the location of the proposed 25-foot wide driveway. Also, the walkways you'll see to the left and right going to one, the covered patio or porch, and the other one to the rear entrance door of one of the units, Unit 3, I believe. Here's the proposed patio and walkway as we're walking towards that Unit 3. You can see And now we've made our way onto the porch for units 1 and 2. You can see the walkways. I also believe that the applicant is looking to recover the front stoop as well in the same paver material, but they can provide testimony on that. And then we're back to the single driveway that's located to the north. And just another view of the property and the current condition. So these are the variance conditions, again, for an unnecessary undue hardship variance. The variance criteria and comments were addressed within the staff findings report. Staff comments and TRC comments. The applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony and respond. Should the board not grant the variance, the applicant should provide testimony of how the driveway would be brought into conformance. The applicant should also provide details on other hardscape installations, pathways, patio, etc., and to describe the scope of improvements planned. An applicant should comment if the recommendation from the TRC can be accomplished. So a TRC was held on June 7th. The staff did recommend shifting the proposed driveways a minimum of 2 feet further to the north, and this is that southern wide property driveway, away from the property line to allow sod or ground cover to be installed to provide a break from the existing driveways and adjacent properties. This will allow for dissimilar materials next to one another and a visual break between the driveways, so it's just not a contiguous drive. Just a little bit more detail on that so you can see where the existing adjoining neighbor is and where they're proposing if we added that break as per the TRC's comment. It would just provide a minimum of 2 feet was recommended for that visual break. Staff finds that the request is reasonable and will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood. Staff does recommend approval of variance case number 23039 with the one condition to provide at least the 2-foot setback from side yard property lines and installation of ground cover or landscaping to be approved by zoning at the time of final inspection. We did not receive any letters with
For or against.
That's correct, sir.
All right, is the applicant here?
Hello,
Have your name and address, please.
Kelly Strom, the address of the property, my personal address or the property address?
Your personal.
500 Treasure Island Causeway, Treasure Island, 33706. So yeah, so this is a property that I own. I'm the only member of the LLC, and just in general, the approach is to improve the property, to beautify it. We're adding landscaping. We priced a lot of the sod that just was looking very, very sparse, not looking good. And then the existing asphalt that was there, it was built in 1947. So it was really, really crumbling and broken up. So we wanted to replace that for sure. And that the reason for the request for additional parking is there are 3 units there, and we were having issues with people, parking in front of the mailboxes or parking end to end, but kind of falling out onto the sidewalk, things like that, because it's not a hotel. A lot of times, if a couple comes and stays, they're going to have 2 cars. So we're trying to accommodate that. Additionally, if somebody needs to come for repairs, if somebody has a visitor, if I need to stop by the property, it was difficult, and so it was just getting kind of messy. When I looked around at the other properties on the street, I saw a lot of people that had these solid pavers, and I really didn't want that because I just didn't think it was very pretty. So what I thought I could do, aesthetically, is just to add that one spot, but still, have the landscaping, have the sod, that type thing. So that was my, intent, I guess, with the request.
The recommendation was to move the driveway over several feet. Do you have any problem with that?
No, I don't. I actually think that's a good suggestion, and it would look nice. And it's always nice to have a little bit of, vegetation between 2 properties. So I'm all for that.
All right, anything else?
That's all.
Okay.
Chair Skipper, may I ask a few questions?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is obviously multifamily. How do you rent this regularly?
Yeah, so it's not short-term rental, it's mid to long-term rental.
So over 30 days or 30 days minimum?
Yes. So there's not always people that are staying a year because we do have them furnished. But it's for that kind of transient person that, you know, is maybe looking for a home and they need 3 months to stay somewhere. So it is, transient probably isn't the right word, but, you know, it's that midterm, which I think there's not a lot, there's not a lot of options for those folks that don't want to, you know, move all their furniture in, set up utilities, and stay somewhere on a yearly basis. So this is kind of meeting that, I guess, midterm need.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because obviously this came or started with code enforcement, and I was just kind of advising you that we do have restrictions on less than 30-day rentals, so that we don't have another case eventually.
Absolutely. No, that's just not being done.
Okay.
It stays very full doing kind of what I'm doing with my niche, and I don't, that's not a thing that I'm doing. I know some people are pursuing that, but I'm
I
not.
appreciate that. Would you mind if we added that as a condition?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's all, thank you. Anyone else here would like to speak on behalf of the applicant? Is there anyone here that an objection to this application? Okay, hearing none, we'll open it up for board discussion. And you were suggesting a condition that if we do move forward with it.
It's pretty redundant because our code says what it says. I wanted to just get it on the record, and I also like to inform property owners because sometimes they don't know about the restrictions. So I don't know if we need to, I mean, considering this is a driveway, I don't know if we need to add the condition. But because this is all part of the record, I appreciate the property owner stating that and making it clear.
All right.
I think it's
Any
very
board discussion?
straightforward. I think the recommendation to add the additional landscaping is a great one, and the fact that she's
That's to move the driveway
over the 2
over
feet.
2 feet and add this.
Yeah.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I would move to approve the variance with the recommendation by staff to separate the driveway from the adjoining property by the 2 feet.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not roll call?
Member Lawson?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now we're down to the case that we moved to the end.
Correct.
Is the authorized person here to speak?
I don't. He is? Okay. Then yes, he is.
Okay, do we need to go over that again since it's been at the end of the case?
Unfortunately, it's like it never happened. So
Right.
we're going to start from scratch.
Just go back a few.
Almost there. And here we are. So variance case number 23018, applicant is Charles Collum, owner of Collum Properties LLC, located at 2007 Pasquero Way. The applicant is requesting an unnecessary and undue hardship variance to install an 8-foot high fence that exceeds maximum permitted height of 4 feet within a waterfront yard. Wrong way. Listing of exhibits. Okay, here is an aerial photograph of the property. The site is highlighted in green. The current use of the property is a restaurant, Red, White, and Booze. It is also a corner lot located on Pasquero Way and 21st Avenue, and also waterfront, being that it is located on the Pasquero Channel. It has single-family residential to the north and east, another commercial restaurant, the Wharf, to the south, and commercial uses to the west. The property is located within the CG1 Commercial District, CG on the future land use map. Here is a survey of the property. And here is an enlarged portion of the survey showing the proposed fence location. The orange rectangle towards the bottom of the screen, that just represents the 25 feet in which a 4-foot high max is permitted, and that he's requesting the 8 foot. Again, just his request detail, bringing you onto the property. Noticing was done as required, and a sign posted on the property. Being that it is a corner property, 2 signs were posted, and the signs were posted on June 20th. Going on to the site, here is the front of the building. This would be the parcel to the south, which is known as the Wharf Restaurant. Going north, looking north is the single-family residential. And as we pan around, here is the intersection also looking north. And across Passive Way to the west is the commercial use. Here is some of the existing fencing located on the property. On the bottom right-hand corner, you will see a little dot. That is the property marker on the seawall. The following slides will show conditions of the existing fencing. Again, that's not to be removed. He's looking to install new fencing approximately 6 inches in off of his property line. I would like the applicant to just provide testimony of any of the pilings or building materials or anything that's in the parking lot, if that will also be removed as part of this application. Again, just heading more towards the west, a little bit of more overview of the current status of the existing fence. And almost to the property line, and you will just the one on the right is looking from west to east. And on this picture, it is at the front of the property line along Passive Way. The red circle on the left-hand picture shows the property marker. And the applicant does wish to construct a 4-foot high fencing in this area, which does meet the requirements of the Land Development Code. And this is just a Google aerial view. I kind of just wanted to show you. In the red line shows the area where the maximum height of 4 foot is permitted and the 8 foot is requested. So it's 25 foot in length. The red, including the yellow, is 8 foot high fencing for a total overall length of 91 feet. And then green is showing 25 feet of the 4 foot high fencing. So of the overall property line of 117.54 feet, 92.54 feet will meet the height requirement. The variance conditions for the hardship variance. And again, the criteria and comments that were in the staff findings report. This application did go before the Technical Review Committee on March 15th, 2023, which was prior to the amended application and plan submittal. The Planning and Zoning provided the comments and questions. The applicant was not at the meeting to address, but it was held. Staff comments. The applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony and respond to staff comments. Due to the proposed 6-inch inset of the fence on the property and the width of the shadow box fencing, the applicant should discuss if the car stops are to remain and if the parking spaces will meet the still meet the minimum depth requirements of 20 feet and drive aisle width of 24 foot as required per the Land Development Code. The applicant's estimate described a wooden shadow box panels for the fence style. The applicant should discuss any changes to the proposed fencings in terms of style, color, etc. Mainly that's kind of like for the width, being that the shadow box is a little thicker and it's finished on both sides. Testimony should be provided detailing installation of the fencing and if it's intended to be placed on top of the existing seawall and if the installation of any gates are proposed. The application and site plan submitted also shows construction of a 4-foot high fence from the front property line 25 feet to the east and then beginning the 8-foot high fence as shown on the plan. And while this portion of the 4-foot high fence will meet code compliance requirements, the applicant should describe this in the information presented to the board just to provide an overview of the proposed improvements. Staff does find the request reasonable and the installation of the fencing with the additional height within the waterfront yard will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood and improve the appearance of the property. With that, staff does recommend approval of variance case 23013 as proposed. And again, there was no letters with regards.
No letters for or against.
As regard to the amended application, that's correct, sir.
Okay, if the applicant's here, if you could come forward. Give us your name and address for the record. Your name and address for the record once you're at the podium.
Yeah, Charles Collum, 2381 East Vina Del Mar Boulevard.
Okay. You want to tell us what you're doing? I think,
Yeah, we're putting up a fence. Now, the shadow box, we changed that, I believe, to a board on board.
I think from, just double check.
I mean, that's the only thing. And not giving the neighbor any issues, the wharf property. I want to set it on our property approximately a foot, back on our property, so it's just our fence. And then there's not going to be any, because at first we were going to go in halves on the fence, and then he kind of backed out on that. So I kind of got a little upset about that. So I'm going to put up our own fence on our property.
okay.
So
And your car stops are going to stay in place?
we'll move them as we need to. I understand you need, I think we'll have to move them if a foot.
Interesting.
Okay.
Say that if you want.
And are you painting it, or is there any color to it? Or
The fence? No, sir.
it's a wood fence?
Yes, sir. It's board on board.
Board on board wood
Yes, sir.
fence?
Charles, I'm just commenting as far as the estimate, it said both, so I just wanted to,
Okay.
just so it was clear to the board and to anybody that, which one you were going with, because it did say both.
Yeah, we're going with the board on board.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I appreciate that.
And Charles, what is the state of the dilapidated fencing that's already there? Is that yours, or is that the wharf?
I don't really know. We've had the property for a year. It looks like it's on the wharf's property, but they've been from their side just putting a board up here, board up there, board up, and then on our side, it just looks like total crap. And so we're trying to improve the property, trying to get it looking the best we can, and that's just part of what we're trying to do. So.
Okay, you're doing,
Questions around like the other materials that are currently?
The other materials we just haven't cleaned up.
Okay.
I mean, just plain,
you're proposing 8-foot fence?
Yes, sir.
And 4-foot fence?
8 foot all the way to the rear, to the seawall.
Right.
Yes, sir. And then 4 foot, 25 foot back to the front.
Street.
But it'll be continuous in terms of material and aesthetics?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And does it go out onto the seawall, or does it stop at
It's going to be on the seawall.
on the seawall?
yeah,
So folks
have
will
a-
have to go over they're not going to be able to crawl over the.
They're not going to be able to crawl around and go to the wharf, right?
Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
That's it, and thanks again for putting me up first, and sorry I wasn't here, I had a doctor's appointment, so.
No problem.
If I may, Chair, I just wanted to also address the width and the depth of the drive aisle and the depth of the parking
The
spaces.
24-foot required in
So what is that from
spaces?
the space, 24 foot?
So the Land Development Code does require a minimum width of 20 feet and the drive aisle to be 24 feet wide between the two, because you have that aisle and then space and then space. So I know that you're going the 6 inches in and then the fence, just to make sure there was good circulation and we're meeting the other requirements. Otherwise, you'd need additional variances.
We'll make sure of that, yeah. We'll make sure of that.
Yeah,
And that's not something we would need to put a condition in for, right? Because it would need to be.
No, it's also just a point to bring to the board and to the applicant to be aware of that.
yeah. When you get a final inspection or whatever, you need to make sure that you're right, within the right distance.
Yes, sir.
You still have the 20-foot parking spaces, you still have the 24-foot driveway.
Correct.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else here would like to speak on behalf of this applicant? Anyone here in opposition?
That's only if it encroaches, right?
Hello, I'm Stanton Chevalier, the manager of the wharf, and also I'll be speaking for Jim Miller, the owner. He was ill and wasn't able to make it today, so just kind of a couple comments on it. Originally, 6771 Park Street, South Pasadena, 33707.
Okay.
Originally, we agreed to go in halves on him with a 6-foot fence. With the 8-foot fence, that literally blocks the view of the wharf from the intersection. When you pull up to that 4-way stop, you have the option to go right to the beach or go forward. With an 8-foot fence, you wouldn't be able to see the wharf basically from the intersection. And also, the front section with the 4-foot fence would block the view of all the green space that the city makes us pay for going one way. If that fence goes up, that blocks even more of our property. So we just didn't see the use of that.
Okay.
We don't have a problem with a 6-foot fence,
4
but
foot is permitted. I mean, he doesn't need.
I didn't realize it was permitted all the way up to the street, though. I thought there had to be so much space before the
I
street.
believe it's permitted all the way to the property
So a
line.
4-foot high fence is permitted in any front yard area. So
Okay.
for that zone, it's 25 feet from the front property line, which we showed on the picture of that pin. So from there, you can go back 25 feet with a 4-foot high fence, and he can go up to 8 as per our fence ordinance within the land development code. Max is 8 feet. So he's just looking for that rear 25 foot from the seawall to be 8 foot and not 4 foot. So it wouldn't have that kind of look to it. It would just be 4 to 8 and continue all the way to the seawall. But the height is not as far as the 8-foot high section in that middle part is permitted, as
Okay.
well as the 4 in the front.
All right, well, we just wanted to go on record as, yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else here in opposition to this case? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing portion. We'll open it up for board discussion. I have a question also. Is there any requirement of which way it's, when it's shadow box or it's whatever,
The board on board,
the
so
board on board, you have to put it one way or the other?
I believe, do we have a finished side must face? No? Okay.
Some places you have
Yeah,
to put
the finished
the,
side must face adjacent property, but not
Right.
here.
okay, was my
So
question.
he would have the finished, but I do have one question if he's going to be installing curb stops, new ones. for
Yeah.
Each of those.
I'd ask about,
Oh, you did, I'm
yeah, I'd
sorry.
ask that question, if the car stops were going to stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or if they are not present, that each
Puts
spot
them
may
in.
have one, just
We
to
can
protect
make-
the new fence.
That could be a
Protect the fence, yeah.
condition to
Yeah.
the,
Okay.
and the 8-foot fence, that's permitted?
8 foot in height is permitted, yes, except for that rear 25-foot portion within the rear waterfront yard.
Uh-huh.
That is a max height of 4.
So the variance really is for that
For
25
just
foot?
that 25-foot section. That's why I showed you the red, yellow, green.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just want to be clear.
A visual continuity perspective, I think it
Yeah.
certainly makes sense to have.
Well, that's not going to affect anything from the view from the intersection on the waterfront
No,
side? No.
No. And being that if he does the 4 from the front
To
to
the
the
prop-
8, he's 25 feet back.
Okay.
And I think that's just past the landscaping, but I can bring that back up if you want to see, because I did measure it on Google just so you would see that, if you'd like.
Can I ask Mr. Cullum a question and follow up?
Yeah, we can have some follow-up.
Mr. Cullum, would you
If he
be,
could come up forward.
just a quick question just after considering the testimony in opposition, would you be open to splitting the cost of a uniform 6-foot high fence instead of 8 foot?
I would rather go 8. It just helps block some of the looks from the other side that I really care not to see, and it just helps us get that extra 2 feet, helps us get that just from not looking at it. But, I mean, I'd rather go with the 8.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay. Any further board discussion? If not, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve case number 23018 as presented by the staff.
Second?
We have a second and a first and a second. Any discussion? If not, roll call.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Member Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. That concludes our agenda for today. Do we have anything else that you want to bring up?
The only thing I'd like to, Chair, if I may, we do have our next meeting will be held July 26th, and we do have one application on for that, a hardship.
All right. Okay, good. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn?
Second to that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We're adjourned until July.